I'm really excited today to chat with you about the way that we're using the Mastery Tracker here at our campus. Just explore some data processes, discuss proficiency levels, analyze some student evidence, and then disaggregate some by student by standard data. One of the things that I wanted to ensure is telling the story that of how we are using the Mastery Tracker. And to do that, I really wanted to talk about the processes that are in place that led us to the point of using the Mastery Tracker in the way that we are. So I want you just to think for a moment. When you hear the word data, what kind of comes into your mind? Are you a 1? Are you a 2, 3, 4, 5? I am a 4. I definitely am that nerdy data person that wants to hear all the data. I want to learn about it. I want to know all the things. Many of the people that I work with might be a 5 or a 1, get a little growly, but today I hope to give you some tools to be able to feel a little bit more comfortable in your data analysis processes. This quote, effective instruction isn't about whether we taught it, it's about whether students learned it. And I truly believe that. Really understanding what it is we're teaching, but what if students are actually understanding the content that we're putting in front of them. And I think that the work that we're doing within the Mastery Tracker helps us to do that.
Charlie, we got a few responses. We have a 4, a 5, and several 3s.
A 4, a 5, and several 3s. Let's see. Okay. I love it. My 4s, you're with me. The 3s, I feel like you're still with me too. And I totally understand the 5s. I have some of my instructional coaches and my RLA person specifically. She's like, I don't want the numbers, but we have great conversations about other things other than just numbers, especially as we have the conversations today. So thank you. That is awesome. All right. So I want you to think as if you were a swim instructor. I'm going to set the table a little bit for why we do what we do here at our campus. So I want you to pretend for just a moment that you are a sharks instructor. So you are someone who's going to be teaching the sharks class. You're going to have 5 to 9-year-olds, and these are the skills that you're going to be taught during that year of instruction. So they're going to have breaststroke, butterfly, backstroke, and forward stroke. So kind of keep that in mind as we move on to the next page. Here are your students. There's actually 3. So you have student 1, student 2, and student 3. And you can see student 1 is actually 7, student 2 is 5, and student 3 is 8. These 3 students, they are all in your class because of their age, but the student 1 has taken the tadpoles and the sunfish class before, but hasn't ever taken the sharks class. Student 2 has actually already taken those 2 and has been in the sharks class before. And then student 3 has also taken all 3 of those. And notice there is a difference, but they're placed in that particular class because of their age. I want to talk about how it impacts when they have a different skill set. So we don't have a ton of information just from this picture. But this picture gives you a little bit more information about each student. So you can see that student 1, the things that have red dots, those are the skills that they have. They have those skills. Those are things that they can do. Student 2 has fewer skills, and student 3 has many more skills than some of the others. And they're all in your sharks class. And remember that student 2 has actually been in the sharks class before, but really doesn't have some of the main skills that they need. So even pull exit strategies, beginning to walk and hold breath when dunked, they've been in that class before, but they don't possess those skills just yet. Student 3, age 8, but has many skills, actually already some skills that are not even on the list for the sharks class. And these 3, plus probably a few more, but these 3 are in your sharks class each day. And really, I'm sure would impact the way that you approach your daily swim lessons. So how does this example relate to the students in our classroom? I think it's a perfect example of what we see in our classroom. We see students who, based on age, are in our grade levels, but some of them come with a certain set of skills, and some of them come with some gaps. based on things that they have experienced in the past. And we, as educators and teachers in the classroom, we have our task is to meet all of their needs when they're all sitting in our classrooms together. And so, how do we do that efficiently? How do we support our students who need intervention? And how do we extend the learning? Because this student 3 here needs their learning extended. They have the skills already for your class, but they need their learning to be extended and challenged. So, how do we do that? And the things that we have set in place here at our campus really are meant to support that work. So I want you to think about your current data processes at your campus. How do you look at your data? How do you look at your campus data? How do you look at your grade level data? Do you have programs that you use to do that? We use Eduphoria pretty heavily. It is our go-to for our data disaggregation. And we, over the last few years, have gotten from the broad campus and grade level disaggregation all the way down to the student level by standard. And so that's where I'm really excited to share with you about today, because that's the work that's going to impact our kiddos the most. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the first part of our learning cycle. So this really, this graphic describes the learning cycle processes that we use at Mance Park. So we unpack our essential standards, and you're going to hear more about how the Mastery Tracker can actually help you with some of that essential standard work later. But we unpack our essentials, we create daily learning targets from those standards, and then we actually create proficiency scales based on those standards. And I think the work of proficiency scales is really what was a catalyst for the growth that we had in our collaborative teams. So question number one, the PLC question number one is, what do we want students to know and be able to do? At the end of this lesson, what does it look like and sound like for students to be successful on that particular learning target? So we have to do that work first before we can actually get to the data part. So this is just an example of an unpacking document that we use here at our campus. Our collaborative teams fill these out together for each essential standard. They do choose those essentials together each year. I know that RLA and social studies have many standards, and it would be impossible to teach every single one of them with the same type of fidelity and depth. So they do choose essentials based on the data and the things that they know from the state level. So an unpacking document, our teams go through that process together, and this is just an example of sixth grade math, 6-8D, and that's the area and volume standard there. But this is what their document looks like once they fill it out. So I want you to take specific notice to these learning targets, and they are built based on the knowing and doing, the nouns and verbs in that standard. So this team decided that there's 4 different learning targets that students should know and be able to do, and each one of those would then become a daily lesson or daily mini lesson in their classrooms. Based on that work, we then have a proficiency scale. So a proficiency scale describes what it looks like to be at grade level ready on that particular standard. So teams have a discussion based on this unpacking document. What does it look like for a 6th grader in math to be at ready when it comes to finding area, volume of triangles, rectangles, and parallelograms, all of those things that are in that standard. So ready is grade level. Close is a student who may have a small misconception, but they don't really need a full small group. Maybe it's a student who has a very quick mistake that can be fixed, and they can move forward and continue in their learning. And then in need of support, those might be your kiddos that they need a full remediation. So they need a reteach in a different manner. They might need a small group, things like that. So we have teachers and teams fill out this proficiency level. This is an example from 6-8D. So this is the standard that we were looking at prior. I know it's a math example, but all of our contents do the same work. So we have the same templates, the same documents for every single content area and every single grade level. Even our content areas that are not tested areas do this work as well to help with the vertical alignment at our campus. So using this information, this is going to come back when we get to our mastery tracker, but these are the words that we use in Huntsville ISD in our mastery tracker. So we use the words ready if a student is at grade level ready on that skill. We use the word close if they need a small bit of intervention, and we use the term in need of support if we know that they need a small group or remediation. So from there, doing all of the work to create those proficiency skills and learning targets is when we go to our CFA and our assessments. So once we call our small little assessments common formative assessments, and we give a CFA for each essential standard. So after a student takes their CFA, the collaborative teams actually gather their evidence and they bring it to their collaborative team meeting. Our teachers, we have a calibration protocol, and they lay out their evidence all across the desk, and they actually rate the student evidence based on the proficiency levels that they have used prior. So groups of educators collaborate to establish and maintain consistency. So the goal for this is consistent scoring and fairness, and basically a shared understanding of what it looks like for a student to be at grade level. I think we've all been in those teams where one teacher has this expectation and another teacher has a different expectation. And our goal at our campus is equitable instruction. So if I take a student from 7th grade social studies and I put them in a different 7th grade social studies classroom, the goal would be that they get the exact same equitable instruction in both of those classrooms because of the work that we're doing in our professional learning communities. So we're going to actually look at some student evidence together. I wanted you to get an idea of what that might look like, and we're going to do that based on the standard that we've kind of been looking at today. So right here is an example, and this is an actual piece of student evidence that we pulled from this CFA from last year. And I want you to just take a look, even if you're not a math person, that's okay. But you see the exemplar on the left, and it highlighted is the student evidence that would be expected. And then on the right, you see the student example. So the piece on the right is what teachers would bring. There would probably be more than one question, but they would bring the actual student evidence, and then they would rate it together, either ready, close, or in need of support. So maybe take a look, see what you might rate that example, and then we'll talk about it in about 15-20 seconds.
Charlie, would it be fair, because like you said, we may have some non-math people, to
Yes.
at least say what the correct answer is?
Oh, yes, I will. The correct answer is 0.96
Okay.
here. And then I just wanted to give people a chance to think, but absolutely. What we would
I
rate.
see.
Yeah.
You have that's like teacher writing on the left and the student writing on the right.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes.
My apologies.
No, you're fine. Yes, we got the exemplar. That would be what we would hope students would say or would write. And then the student example is there on the right side.
And
So
you said
this
that
one,
that was me being dense. I apologize.
that's okay. So this one actually would we as a team, as a 6th grade collaborative team, rated this one in need of support. The reason being, if we look back at our proficiency levels, we usually have those in front of us. But if you see on this right side example, it says A equals 1.2 times 2.0 times 1.6. So obviously that student has a misunderstanding of the formula, and that would be in that proficiency level in need of support. It mentioned being confused about the formula specifically. So that's the type of work that teachers are doing. And you can see this snippet here from the mastery tracker, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. But this is what that looks like as they're rating that evidence in the mastery tracker. And then I want to show you what we do with that next. I do want to show you just one ready example. Same situation, same like group of evidence, different kiddo, and you can see the difference here on the right side, same exemplar, but the student work definitely looks much more similar to the exemplar that has been created. So that student was rated ready, and they would be in that group when we got to do our tiered lesson later in that unit. Same situation here. This kiddo was ready as well. I put this one here just to show you that even though his work or her work doesn't look exactly like the exemplar, that because we have that proficiency level, we can still see that that kiddo and their evidence is at the ready level. All right, so here's where a lot of the mastery tracker work comes in. So we've done our pre-work, we've done all of the before instruction planning, and now we get to actually take the data and analyze it. But what I wanted to talk about first before anything else is, why is the mastery tracker so beneficial? This is an actual snippet. I redacted the student names and all the special populations, but this is an actual snippet of what we used prior to track data. And I love the phrase, when you know better, you do better, because this was a great system. This is what we used. Teachers would take information, they would actually export it from Eduphoria at some points, put it all in one place so that they could see trends. And you can even see the color coding, conditional formatting there on the right. It was a wonderful system. However, we have programs now in Eduphoria that do all of those things for us and allow us to track trends across our students by student by standard. So I just wanted to take a minute to just say I love this program because it creates efficiency for our teachers, and it helps us to drive instructional decisions at the student by standard level. And we know that is what impacts instruction the most. So this is what it looks like to create a mastery tracker. So if you're in Eduphoria, it is Eduphoria Premium. You are, it is on your left-hand side under Mastery, and then really it is very user-friendly. You click Create Tracker. This is my list. So I actually have created myself a few lists already for this year. And so you'll see mine there, but those are the ones that you then can track data in the system. I do want to mention that staff that do not have students tied to them in your school information system, so if you use Skyward, whatever else that you use, those staff would need to create a student access list before they can create a mastery tracker. So for instance, I have these lists because I created a 6th grade social studies student access list so that I could then see data. Teachers will automatically be able to create their trackers from their course lists, and that is so easy. They click first period and it creates their mastery tracker by period if that's how they choose to do it. But I did just want to mention, if you do have staff, instructional coaches, other people that want to have a mastery tracker, they do actually have to have a student access list first. This is an overview. Once you add an assessment, so I've created my mastery tracker. Now I have added some assessments. You'll see grayed out on the left, the student names there. That's each individual student has a row. And so you can see on 6-3C, the student got 1 point out of 5. 6-3D, 1 out of 3, 6-4A, 0 out of 1, and then 7-8A, 2 out of 6. This is a 7th grade social studies tracker, so they were doing some beginning of year work with some prior knowledge, and that's why they have some 6th grade standards there. But this is kind of the view that you get, and I love it because once you begin to get more data, latest raw is going to be the most recent assessment. Total raw is actually going to be for that standard across the entire year. And I have a screenshot of what that looks like a little bit later. So this is just the broad view of the mastery tracker. You can actually, this is, I'm going to go back to what I talked about earlier with the central standards. This is a brand new feature that Jeremy shared with me recently. So you can actually set your focus standards. And for me, what that means is, instead of having a huge list where you have to see this bottom, you scroll all the way to the right and you get to see all of your standards. Instead of doing that, if we have, as a group and as a collaborative team, decided on certain essential standards, Eduphoria has actually now given us the availability to choose those as focus standards. So you can actually put a star on those, and then they will actually be listed just focus standards if you choose that. So I love that. I think it's awesome. I know that our school will be utilizing that to denote which standards are our essential standards, and that way we can see those very quickly in a view. The next piece is, you can see that it has the data. So you have the how many points out of how many points they got correct out of the total number of points. And mind you, it's points, not questions, because we know we can have 2-point questions, or could be an SCR, things like that. But also there is a feature for mastery. So there's two different options, and I wanted to talk to you about both of them. Teachers can rate students in the mastery tracker, and you'll see it's just you click this mastery button and you get those ready, close, and need of support. I think in Eduphoria, Jeremy, what's the wording there in Eduphoria? I think it's exceeding, mastered,
Uh,
and
oh, one second. I actually have this. It's limited, mastered, and exceeded.
limited, mastered, and exceeding. So we actually changed our wording to mimic our proficiency levels, and you have to change it at the district level. So if you choose to have some different wording, just know we learned by experience that if you change it, it does change it for your entire district. So thankfully, we are utilizing the terminology for proficiency levels across campuses. So that was something that we could do. But just know that that terminology is editable if you choose, but it does have to be the same for the entire district. So teachers can choose to rate a student ready, close, and need of support, and think back to that work that we saw just a minute ago. We look at the student evidence and we say, okay, based on their misconceptions, this is the thing that I think that this is where they need to be. They need to be at in need of support because they put all of the numbers just jumbled in the formula. And a teacher would click in need of support. There is a new feature that I wanted to share with you. And the way that that works is you can actually set a threshold for each level of proficiency. So instead of being qualitative, it would be quantitative. So on the next slide here, we use student evidence to rate our students based on proficiency levels, but we're actually also going to use the other way when it comes to our star review, and I'll share that with you in just a moment. The reason that we like to use the teacher perceptions and the teacher ratings after CFAs is because our push is student evidence. So for us, it's important that we gather student evidence, that we look at the misconceptions, we look at those justifications that students have. And if we chose to just look at their score, then we might be missing some information. So at the beginning, when we're doing first time instruction, we are going to lean on teachers choosing those levels. However, at the end of the year, there is a calculate mastery button, and that is what we're going to use to create our star review groups. And so we're gonna kind of use both. We're gonna do the teacher chosen perception mastery after our CFAs during first time instruction. And then at the end of the year, probably March, April, we're going to use the calculate mastery button to help create our star review groups. And that's what this would look like. So this is actually a snippet of not our district. So you can see where it says limited, mastered, and exceeded. And here in this in the hamburger, you could see that mastery calculation settings. So there's a calculate mastery button. It has the really pretty little stars because it's actually pretty cool. And you can set that. That does have to be set, I believe, at the district level as well. So it's not something that you can set by team. That would be something that you have to have a discussion with your leadership team about. But if you choose to set that mastery calculation, it's going to look something like this. So you can choose the user set mastery, which that's what we're going to do for CFAs and at the beginning of the year. Towards the end of the year, we're going to come back to this same screen and we're going to click calculated mastery. And that's where it will actually assign either ready, close, in need of support, limited, mastered, or exceeding. And you can see it will assign it based on a specific percentage. And I think that is going to be such a game changer for us for star review, because the way that we did star review, and this is an actual snippet of our mastery trackers at the end of the year last year. I believe this is 8th grade RLA. So at the end of last year, you can see over here on the right-hand side, students had 25 points of opportunity for 8.6B standard. And I believe that's where they were housing their ECRs and all of that information about those extended constructed responses. So based on the calculate mastery, that at the end of this year, we're going to be able to go in and set a threshold of If you're below 50%, you're going to be in need of support. If you're 50 to 75, you're going to be close. And if you're 75 to 100, you're going to be ready. Whatever the team decides and whatever the leadership team decides that those thresholds are. So the great thing is, instead of hand calculating, which is what we did last year, that now we can go back to this calculate mastery. We can set our percentages. We can hit that beautiful calculate mastery button. And that's where then our groups for star review, we will be able to run those groups from there. I know I've talked a lot about Mastery Tracker so far. Do we have any specific thoughts or questions? Anything I can share a little bit more about before we move to the next piece?
Charlie, we've actually had several questions come
Okay,
in, but so far I've been able to answer them all. A lot
awesome.
of them have been specific to like, could you demonstrate how to actually make a student access list? And I said
Yes.
at the conclusion of your segment, I would go ahead and demonstrate that.
Awesome.
Or you could if you wanted to, but yeah,
Yeah,
after we're done with the mastery piece. I've also had some specific questions about where to actually access the focus standards again. And I've told them that part. And
awesome.
then when it comes to like the calculation perceptions, is that set only at a district level or can you do it at a grade level and content level? And I told them it was at a district level only at
Yeah.
this time. So I think so far we're okay.
Okay, good deal. Um, like I said, this tool, you can see how efficient that this makes things for teachers. So rather than using and spending the time doing the calculating, the conversations are now about the actual work, and they're about how we can then intervene with each of these kiddos. So the next portion really talks about how do we then use what we have in the mastery tracker, because if we just leave it at that and we don't really do anything with it, then we have this amazing tool that we're not then utilizing to meet students' needs. So this is kind of a graphic that I created, and if you are a part of a collaborative team and you have other teachers that teach your same content and you can share, I would say I have some options for you and I have some things I would encourage you. If you are a singleton teacher and you're the only sixth grade science teacher on your campus, you have some options as well. So I kind of want to talk about both of those before we look at how the data from Eduphoria then becomes what we call tiered lesson rosters. So I'm going to start with collaborative teams and really just talk about the things that we have done and we have seen and had success in. The teams that are actually doing some of these things with fidelity have really seen a jump in their data specifically. And so there is evidence of effectiveness there. So shared tutorials, basically teachers use their mastery trackers and they group students by need. So you could really think about going back to this spot here and going, okay, I need student 1 or student 2, student 4, and student 7. Please come to tutorials. My partner teacher is going to host a tutorials on this standard, and I'm going to host a tutorial on this standard. And please go to that one because that's the standard that you need. That's kind of what a shared tutorial session might look like. And my favorite on this list is tiered rotations. So tiered rotations, actually my principal that was with us prior to this year, and he's now at the district level as our assistant superintendent of teaching and learning, but he really brought tiered lessons and tiered rotations to our campus. And it really is just another way to differentiate. But the great thing about tiered rotations is it uses the proficiency levels and the work that we do within the lesson cycle, and then it gives students exactly what they need. So we have teams that use that mastery tracker. They rate ready, close, and in need of support. And then any kid that's in, let's say, first period RLA, one teacher is going to take all the kids that are ready, one teacher is going to take all the kids that are close, and one teacher is going to take all the kids that are in need of support from all 3 of those classrooms. So what ends up happening is each of those classrooms becomes a very targeted by student, by standard intervention or enrichment time based on exactly what they need. And the great thing about that is you have one level of student in each room. In our classrooms each day, we have various levels of student. We've talked about the swim lessons example from the beginning. And with this tiered rotations, it creates an atmosphere where the same type of student is in each room. And that is something that we have found to be very effective. Shared intervention period. If you have an intervention period during your school day, you could also do the same thing. We have something called Hornet Time, and we have switched and rotated and used that, for the mastery tracker for those groups as well, by standard. If you're a singleton teacher, all of those same things apply. I would say all the things that we talked about on the collaborative side, you do them within your classroom. So you use your mastery tracker, and if you know that you have 5 students that are struggling with 6-8D, then while the other kiddos are doing independent practice, then you can pull them for a small group and have a little discussion with them. I would say we have had teachers do tiered lessons within their classroom. So we have an algebra teacher who, she's the only one. Nobody else teaches algebra at our campus, but she still wants to do this work and this targeted work. And so she actually has tiered lessons within her algebra classroom. So she's got her ready group and they're doing something specific. She's got her close group that's probably doing a little bit of practice. And then she has her in need of support group that is her small group. And she's running those things within her classroom on that given day. All of those, I think, are wonderful options to utilize the data that we have just gathered in the Mastery Tracker. I wanted to go into a tiered lesson a little bit more, but tiered lesson is basically another way to differentiate. I think for a while, the word differentiation was, it could have a little bit of a taboo. You would say differentiation, and I think you would see the teachers do the shimmy like when they said Mufasa in The Lion King. And so really tiered lesson just means that we're giving kiddos exactly what they need at exactly the level that they need it. And so for us, we do that through our proficiency levels. This is a snippet of what that might look like. Again, we use our own teacher ratings for ready, close, and in need of support. But this particular group would be on the left would be your ready group. This particular group in the middle would be your close group, and this particular group would be your in need of support. And those kiddos would end up in 3 different classrooms. Now we have, depending upon the team, we may have 3 teachers for that subject or 4. And so, that does help when there's more people to be able to meet the needs of those kiddos. But again, this can also be done within the classroom as well. This is what we have a Google sheet that really houses our rosters. So you can see that on this particular day, and I think this was actually for that 6-8D standard, that we had 18 kids that were ready. Under the teacher column, that's the teacher that they came from. And under the room, that's the room that they were going to be going to for that particular tiered lesson. Same as close, 22. Those kiddos, where they came from is the teacher column, and where they're headed was the room number. Our in need of support groups, we try to keep smaller. So this one says 23, and that they were all going to Miss Wood. They actually, at that point, then split up with the co-teacher that she had, so that they had about 11 and 12 in each class. So that's kind of how we utilize the Mastery Tracker to then really impact the learning that's happening in our classrooms. We do create a lesson for those. So much like this is very similar to our lesson plan template that we have at our campus. But this one, you can see there's a lesson for each type of proficiency level. And this is really based on the misconceptions that they've seen from students. We have these built prior to the unit, but then we really look at them as we get the data. And, each group of students is different. The misconceptions sometimes are different. And so then here is an example of one that's filled out. Again, this is just an example from 6th grade math, but this is definitely the work that they do to prepare then for those tiered lessons. And that way they can get those kiddos exactly what they need for those skills.